세계적으로 기후변화로 인한 위기감이 고조되고 있습니다. 육상뿐 아니라 해양에서도 각종 동식물의 북방한계선에 위치한 제주로서는 기후변화를 실감할 수밖에 없는 상황이기도 한데요. 기후변화로 인해 발생하는 각종 환경문제를 다루고 대안을 모색하고 있는 내셔널지오그래픽 질 티판텔러 CEO를 JIBS가 만나봤습니다.
So the consequences of both climate change and biodiversity loss, we're seeing more and more throughout our society, throughout our world. And clearly they are the result of an imbalance between nature and people. And we know that as a result of human activity, right, we've seen not only an increase in CO2 emissions, but also practices that have tipped the balance away from being balanced, as indigenous people did for years and years, and toward favoring human activity and consumption. So it's time to get that balance back in order. So that's really what sustainability is about, finding that right balance. And for us, that means changing some of our own behavior, really focusing on supporting, reducing pollution, reducing our CO2 emissions, and also thinking about how we're going to deal with the adaptation to climate change. We have about 6,000 explorers around the globe, including many working here in Asia and in Korea. And many of them are working on ocean conservation, whether that be through direct protection or telling the stories of the ocean so that we can help people understand the threats it faces and how to deal with those threats. One of the really premier projects that we are supporting at National Geographic is National Geographic's Pristine Seas program. And for about a decade, Pristine Seas has been focused on creating marine protected areas around the globe. Recently, they've over the last decade, they've worked with communities and established 26 marine protected areas that have conserved or protected the parts of the ocean that are about twice the size of India. Well, we know the microplastics problem is incredibly serious. I just returned from an expedition in the Hawaiian Islands where we had a microplastics team on board the research vessel. And they were doing work to sample the waters from the islands to actually test for microplastics and finding especially microfibers from clothing throughout the ocean, both from the deep sea, the surface area and the shore, but also the air from the ocean. It's always interesting, while we know we find these microplastics everywhere, they found microplastics in the Mariana Trench, and they found them all the way up on Everest, and in an expedition on Everest. So what this team and many of are trying to now understand, we know they're dangerous, right, because not only are many of them toxic generally, but also the ingestion of microplastics by sea life, fish, they're not digestible, and they are causing some serious issues there as well. So we're trying to both understand that issue and also figure out then what are the easiest ways to address it. In Hawaii, we have a series of expeditions happening right now over several months in the Hawaiian Islands and other parts of the Pacific. And really looking there at, as I mentioned, microplastics, but also things like shark research. And the shark research is really also focused on the health of the ocean and biodiversity loss. So with new techniques like dropping underwater cameras and doing eDNA, environmental DNA samples, the sharks team is looking to see what's happening to the population of sharks in the Pacific. Are we seeing a decline in the numbers and also the different species of sharks in those areas? They just returned from an expedition in the Pacific in the Line Islands, where 5 years ago, when we had the incredible El Nino with very warm temperatures, the reefs were bleached, and we really worried we had lost those reefs. They left and came back 5 years later after this marine protected area, and were thrilled to see that the reefs had begun to regenerate themselves. So we learned there, while a lot of people have hoped that maybe coral planting might be a solution to some of the loss of coral, we actually can see that through marine protection, the ocean can begin to regenerate itself, which has huge implications for thinking about how we bring back some of what we've lost in the ocean in recent years. But lots of exciting research happening out there.